Hey, hope you're having a fine day. This is a different kind of video. I'm sitting here on the other side of my shop at my desk. I want to talk to you about one of the most important issues in life, and that's what kind of power tools to buy. These days when you go into a big box store, there's all kinds of choices. 50 different kinds of power drills, 50 different kinds of table saws. You go on the interweb and there's 1,000 out there. And so folks get caught up in the hype on all this and all the marketing and this gadget and that gadget. So I want to cut through some of that and just give you what's worked for me over the years when it comes to buying tools. First of all, don't get caught up in the hype. A power tool isn't pretty. A power tool isn't fashion. It's a tool that you use. So, look at all the name brands out there. It's pretty much all marketing. There's not a difference in quality at the same price point, and that's fine. That's just part of the free market, right? So the other thing that comes up is, does it matter where a tool is made in China, the U.S., or Europe, or Mexico, or Taiwan, whatever? A lot of folks will probably hate this statement here, but I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. I will say this: if I have the option to buy something made in the U.S. and it is truly U.S. made, that is, the internal components are from the U.S., which you just won't find that out there. Yeah, I prefer to buy something American made. If I could afford it, I'd buy something made in Germany, because the Festool brand and those brands are incredible brands that make an incredible tool. Let's get to the heart of this. What a power tool is, whether if it's stationary or a hand tool, it's an electric motor you're buying with a shaft on it, and at that shaft you're going to have a saw blade, a drill bit, a router bit, a sanding disc, or something for you to perform a task with. So what you're really buying with power tools is a motor with a shaft with something to go on the end of that shaft. That piece of wood you're cutting, it doesn't care where the tool came from, okay? If you're looking at different quality of tools from different makers and so forth, again, almost everything is made in China or Taiwan. You want to look at what you're going to get out of that tool. If I'm a do-it-yourselfer and I buy a rechargeable drill or a hammer driver or something, and I'm going to use that maybe 10 minutes a month, go buy you a cheap tool, okay? If you're expecting to get 10, 15 years out of it, and you're going to use that on a much more regular basis as somebody who's professional or a very avid woodworker or somebody in the trades, then it's worth trading up to something higher. Think about it this way: I can buy at the lower price point a Black & Decker drill or a Skill brand drill at $50. At $150, I can buy the next step up, typically like a Milwaukee or a Hilti or something like that, and then I can go up to $300, $400 and buy a Festool type tool made in Germany. Again, if I'm looking to get 10, 15, 20 years out of that tool, then I'm going to go to something more expensive typically. All right. Now, keep in mind, however, I've got tools in my shop that I've had for 20 hand power tools for 25, 30 years that came from Sears. Because back in the day, the Craftsman brand was where you went to get your tools, right? And they run just fine. I've got a cheap Harbor Freight drill press I paid $59 for 12 years ago, and I've beaten that thing to death, and it works great. A cheap tool will last you. Here's the other thing about cheap tools. They may not cut square. They may be kind of hard to do your task with, but you can make them work just fine if you have the patience. I had again, a Harbor Freight compound sliding miter saw that was dependable, but it didn't cut very square. I always had to do adjustments on it. I always had to be aware of what I was cutting. I upgraded to a little nicer saw, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. So if you have the patience and the time, a cheap tool will work just fine. It's just going to be a little more frustration on your part because you're always having to adjust and set up and so forth. So, that's a couple of tips that I think on tools. Here's kind of a closing thing. Should you buy a cheap tool or a more expensive tool? Well, again, depends on how long you plan on using that tool. I have never regretted spending a little more money for a better tool, but I have regretted spending less money and getting a cheap tool. If you think about the common tool, let's say a power drill, I can spend $50 or I can spend $125, $150, $100 more. If I'm getting 10, 15 years service out of that drill, then it's worth a little extra money. It's not that much more, rather than having to replace it a couple of times and then be frustrated along the way because it doesn't work well, doesn't charge right, and so forth. So, again, you got a lot of options out there on power tools. Don't get caught up in the hype. And then third, buy a little more expensive tool than what you think you want to spend, okay? And you'll never regret that. So again, just a couple of words of advice here. Take it or leave it, all right? I'd like for you to leave a comment. I'd like to hear your thoughts, get some feedback on this subject. Because, again, thanks so much for watching. Let's have a conversation. Thanks, and I hope y'all have a fine day.